It's the second Star Wars movie, or is it the fifth? It's The Empire Strikes Back. Let me tell you why I think this movie is great. Coming up next. All right, most people know The Empire Strikes Back, and it's a movie that's been talked about endlessly, made fun of in all kinds of scenarios, and everybody knows the plot twist in this. So there's not spoilers in this video because everybody knows what happens in this movie. I actually don't want to talk about big things that go on, the characters, the plot, the settings, and all that. I think this movie is really great, in part because of its construction. It is visually quite amazing to see, and all the little details that go into this movie are fabulous, and that's what I want to point out to you in this video. I think that what makes this movie work really well, besides being obviously the sequel to a very famous movie, Star Wars, is the variety in the movie. Obviously with the settings, you go from the ice planet to space and the asteroid belt. You've got the ship going into a cave, you've got the swamp, and then you've got a cloud city at the end. That's 4 to 5 different settings all mixed together. And this movie is the foundation for, in my opinion, the modern blockbusters, the modern superhero movies coming out in the last 10 to 15 years as of this video's release date. Those movies tend to have a lot of melodrama, but a lot of humor, a clear villain with a clear purpose, a lot of variety in terms of settings and a variety of characters. They tend to be long, they tend to have a lot of special effects, and they tend to have music that is overly emotional and dramatic. And you'll find all of that in The Empire Strikes Back, which I think is more of an origin point for that kind of serious blockbuster, a la The Avengers, than I think the original Star Wars is. Now, I know that Star Wars from 1977 is considered the original blockbuster along with Jaws, or a movie that had a ton of money and got a lot of fan base, for example, around the world. But I think The Empire Strikes Back is more of the kind of movie you've been seeing ever since it came out. The variety comes up in all of the geometric shapes in this film. There are dozens of geometric shapes: circles, triangles, squares, vertical lines moving around all over the place, giving this film not just variety and diversity, making you feel that there's something new in every frame and every scene, but also a lot of movement. This movie moves around more than just about any movie you can imagine. Some of that movement happens with characters just moving around on the screen, but there are a lot of transitions that George Lucas and Irving Kershner used that are dynamic, such as the frequent wipes in the movie. Now, a wipe usually indicates some kind of fun, adventuresome transition. They go back to, say, the 1930s and 40s, adventure sort of movies that use wipes. Kurosawa's films, for example, that George Lucas was inspired by, also use wipes as transitions. They tend to be fun, jaunty, maybe a little playful, indicating the movie is not real. And they occasionally make the movie more dynamic than just a straight cut from scene to scene. The Empire Strikes Back in the first 20 minutes has over a dozen unusual wipes that you will not see in almost any movie ever made. They are weird, they're interesting, and they're more playful and fun than normal straight across the screen wipes. One wipe I want to focus on, even though there's a lot of them and a lot of geometrical shapes in them, is the swirl or fan wipe you see right about here. Last time I watched the movie, this wipe really stood out to me as something that I don't think I've ever seen in a movie. It indicates that the movie itself wants to do the circular and swirling motion quite often. And if you notice in this movie, you will see not just this wipe very quickly being a swirl or circle that moves quickly, but also a lot of other kinds of swirls or circles within the frame, such as the asteroids spinning around in the whole asteroid belt sequence, or the lightsabers later in the movie spinning around the movie frame. This kind of wild circular dynamism is something you rarely see in any movie. It makes the movie, for one thing, and this is obvious, much more exciting than a normal movie that's static without movement. Say like a David Fincher movie, for example. Not a lot of movement in a Fincher movie, in my opinion. In other words, this movie wants to move all over the place. That matches, obviously, what the characters do, going from one setting to the next, and whizzing around in spaceships. They whiz across the ice planet. They whiz into space. They go around the Cloud City, for example. They go all the way around the asteroid belt, A lot of it is a circular motion of these ships, and that's sort of set up in these earlier shots where you have these characters just static on an ice planet. Remember, they're only in a base, they're not moving. When the Empire comes, they're forced to evacuate the base. But the movement is created very early, including in the opening shots in the movie where the droid comes down out of the ship, goes to the ice planet. There's a lot of movement up and down, left and right, and swirling all over this movie. That sort of quick and constant movement goes along with, one, the dramatic music from John Williams, very dramatic, romantic, classical sounding music here, and then of course the sweep of the melodramatic, operatic story, in which of course, spoiler, Luke Skywalker finds out that Darth Vader, the arch villain, is his father. I am arguing that the sequence where Darth Vader is revealed to be the father of Luke Skywalker, a shock in 1980 when this movie came out, is set up by the entirety of the rest of the movie being very active, moving around, dynamic, and alive on screen. Everything moving around on screen creates this dynamism where the plot picks up right on top of that and it becomes melodramatic and then pushes it right at that last moment, even setting us up for Luke Skywalker's choice, which is to choose not to go statically back to his father, crawling back across that, whatever that thing is, but to fall and fall and fall. And you hear the music when he falls, and it's another dynamic movement across the screen and across a series of shots. Does all this dynamic movement, the swirl wipe, and other things make a movie great? No, but it does unify what the plot wants to do, what the music wants to do, and it really helps us, I think, enjoy this movie a lot better than we otherwise would, especially given that not much is really going on in the opening besides, Luke Skywalker running into an ice monster and then the Empire attacking the ice base. Now, this video has just talked about just a few tidbits from Empire Strikes Back. There are obviously thousands and thousands of others, but in my opinion, this is a very well-made, very well-constructed movie that even if you hate space opera, science fiction, blockbuster movies that appeal to the masses, you actually have to, I think, appreciate the technical craftsmanship aspect of this movie, which is all over the screen in every frame of the movie. That's what George Lucas, I think, was particularly, as the head of a movie, what he was particularly good at. What do you think of Empire Strikes Back? What do you believe about it? I do think this movie took the whole franchise, and maybe all blockbusters, in a darker, more melodramatic direction, and I do wish that the original Star Wars, that sort of playful adventurism in that movie, would have been the legacy of blockbusters, say like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, or maybe the Indiana Jones movies, but there are a lot of darker blockbusters influenced by Empire Strikes Back. Maybe that's your taste, so maybe you appreciate that. What do you think of this movie, though? Let us know in the comments, and please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.